welcome to what I believe is the 9th installment in this Mijello Journal series. This is where I've been showcasing individual colors from Mijello's Mission Gold Pure Pigment set. Just flipping through as a reminder of what's come before, the most recent being Permanent Yellow Light. So if you've missed any of those earlier sessions, check them out. After viewing this one, that is. Oh, and liking and subscribing, of course. Whew, back off, Irene. Don't go getting ahead of yourself. They can smell fear. Today, it's Indanthrone Blue PB60. I chose to go with several Aqua Elite flat brushes. They're from Princeton and are made with synthetic Kolinsky sable. The 1.5-inch modeler worked great for the big swatch and wash. Then I switched to the 1/2-inch stroke for creating the mixes. Now, later on, during the painting portion, I do involve a couple of Neptune rounds, a number 6 and a number 2. But most of the paintwork in this session is done with the flat brushes. I'd like to note that, yes, the main swatch looks a little streaky, but in an actual painting situation, it performed really well. Just keep watching to see for yourself. The way I do mixes here is I give 2 variations. For example, with Quinanthrone Yellow Light, the first mix has more yellow, whereas the second mix has more blue. It's just a way to show more possibilities between 2 colors. And I only involve a dozen colors. A little behind the scenes secret here. Yes, I do mix the featured color with all of the other colors in the 34 tube set. Well, 33 actually, since I don't use white. But that's done ahead of time and off camera. Then I pick the ones that gave the most interesting results. And it's limited to 12 because that's about all I want to handle. In the last video, I think I forgot to include much of the palette action, so I'm making up for it by having the palette in frame as much as I could, so you can see exactly what I'm dipping into. The only other thing left to share would be the jar of paint water. I don't think that's necessary, but I guess if you've got a filthy water fetish to scratch, I'll see what I can do. There's gotta be a niche for that, no? The paper is from the B Paper Company. It's 140-pound cold pressed and 100% cotton. I found a current listing for the B Watercolor Journal on Amazon, but it's the 8.5 by 11 inch size, not the 8 by 8 size I'm using here. And surprise, surprise, it looks like there's a limited supply. For some time now, the B watercolor journals have been hard to find. So for those who have been looking for this paper, there's an Amazon affiliate link in the description, along with links to the other supplies used in this session. On the subject of supplies, I'm glad I held on to my chipped porcelain flower palette. Producer Mike got me a second one, I think with the idea that I should replace the chipped one, but I'm just careful about how I handle it, because it works great. especially at times like this when I need lots of small wells. Yeah, one is good, but two is even better. Later in this video, once I began the painting, I brought out a larger porcelain serving plate given to me by a relative. That is perfect for preparing big pools of color intended for covering large areas. By the way, the burnt sienna number 2, that's in the wrong spot there. All the info is correct, but it should have been on the bottom row. These things happen, and you just gotta go with the flow. Here I performed some glazing or layering, as well as some lifting. You never know when you'll have to try and either cover up or erase a mistake after all. Yeah, good luck with using a transparent medium for that. In any case, the light wash looks fab. Before moving on to the painting portion, I want to make sure you get a good look at those mixes. Personally, I think this Indanthrone blue is a great mixing component. It creates deep, intense shades, whether it's with quinophthalone yellow light, quinacridone permanent magenta, or green gold. Here you can see the preliminary drawing on toned sketch paper. I used color pencils for that. That's Strathmore's toned sketchbook in tan, and it's also available in gray. So I just had the first drawing there for reference, as I sketched something similar in the B watercolor journal. It wasn't the sort of thing I'd try to recreate as closely as possible. Yeah, I could have pulled out my LED tracing pad to get it exactly the same, and there are times when that might be called for, but for something like this, loosey-goosey works just fine. The sequence may seem a bit choppy because I had to remove some blurry bits here and there, but also because it wasn't all that exciting. But it is part of the process, so I wanted to include at least some of it. The pencil I used there was a Derwent Lightfast in mid-ultramarine. Last year, a lovely viewer had kindly sent me some color pencils from several brands, and I like to use them for undersketching like this, but also for detailing on top of watercolors. There was a time many years ago when I did full pieces in color pencils. That was back when I had a set of 24 Prismacolor pencils. I had fun with that, but man, that was a lot of work. These days, I love the ability to fill large areas quickly with watercolors. I do enjoy Faber-Castell's artist pens, and this one in particular with the soft brush tip is my favorite. Just look at the line width variation there. Yeah, I could whip out a bottle of ink and a detailing brush, but that technique requires a steady, skillful hand. Well, this does too, but it's a little more forgiving in my opinion. So, the idea for this painting was that I wanted to experiment with the negative painting technique. If you're not familiar with that term, imagine you're painting, for example, a rose. The rose is the subject, and it's your foreground object. You can also call it the positive space. The area around the rose is your background, also referred to as negative space. So, the technique of negative painting emphasizes the treatment of those negative spaces. That often means that you paint everything that's not the main object in darker, more intense shades. That adds visual depth by making the positive space pop out even more. Now, there's more to it, but that's the main gist. So I thought it through and decided to do this in several stages. To start, I laid down a pale background wash, covering everything from top to bottom and side to side. After outlining the top layer of foliage, I added a second, darker wash using the negative painting technique. Following that was a third layer using the same process. Now, this isn't one of my better pieces, but as an exercise, it helped me to figure out how I can create visual depth and make it look as if there are multiple layers of foliage. I just wish I hadn't gone with straight Indanthrone. Some mixes thrown in would have made it more attractive, I think. I'm going to share a little of my personal history with the color blue. There were many years where I did not include much blue in my wardrobe. While growing up, I wore a lot of hand-me-downs. Longtime viewers have already heard about my tube sock trauma, but I also had to wear my older brother's jeans, shirts, and jackets as well. Basically, I didn't have much choice in what I wore. And one day, as I walked the 8 or so blocks to my middle school, I looked down at myself and saw blue sneakers, blue jeans, and a blue shirt peeking out from beneath a blue jacket. Remember Violet Beauregard turning into a blueberry at the Wonka factory? Yeah, it was kinda like that. It's tempting to say I pulled a Scarlett O'Hara and shook a fist at the sky while proclaiming, I'll never wear blue again. I'm not saying that my epiphany in blue had me seeing red, but it was one of those self-awareness moments that kind of stuck with me. And it wasn't even all that dramatic. I simply decided to wear nearly any color other than blue from then on. I had to wait a few years when I was actually allowed to pick out my own clothes before I could actualize my no more blue ethos. It didn't last long, though. 2, maybe 3 years. Because, seriously, who can live without blue jeans? If you enjoyed this video, just click that like button, and if you're not subscribed already, hit the subscribe button too. It's a win-win for everybody because YouTube will know what sort of things you like to watch, and I'll get those coveted clicks. I must have them all. So, we're 9 episodes into this Mijello Journal series, and I have some thoughts. But first, let me provide some context. Inkworks has been creating content for a little over 2 years now, with a library of more than 170 videos. Personally, this series has been one of the most rewarding things I've done on this channel. It has stimulated my creativity and kept me going during times of low motivation. I may be getting through the set at sloth speed, and I might call it quits after installment number 12, but that won't change the fact that I've had a blast with it so far. It's an exercise I recommend for sure. It doesn't have to be a 34 color set, nor does it have to be single pigment colors. Maybe you've got a 12 pan travel tin laying around that you haven't been using much. Well, get a 4x6 or a 5x7 watercolor journal and dedicate it to swatching, mixing, and experimenting with just that palette. Simply an idea I'm tossing out there. I'm happy to share this session of the Mijello Journal series. This one was a little different in that I did not use mixes for the painting. I simply used the featured color on its own in various strengths. I could say that was on purpose, but I just forgot what I was doing. So, yeah, next time I'll probably be incorporating mixes into the painting again. I'm happy to share this session with you. Until next time, remember, yellow sticky notes are your friends. And stay artsy, my friends.